Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Chopper Talk. It is summer. I'm wearing my summer shirt, and this is my summer vacation. I haven't had a vacation in over 6 months now, so I'm kind of taking it chill and fun. And that's kind of what I want to do on today's episode. I've got no guest today, but since this is the Chopper Talk podcast, I kind of wanted to go through and rank all of the helicopter jobs I have seen and all the helicopter jobs that I know exist. So we're going to go through and just rate them, and I'm going to talk about them and if I wanted to do them, and I'm going to rate it on a scale like an A, B, C, D, E. No, just A, B, C, and D scale in quality of jobs that I'd want to do. But something to catch back up on that we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, I told you guys that story about that Georgia Blackhawk military crash where there was a Blackhawk crash at 2 a.m. and one guy died and no one else died, and no one else was injured, and we didn't have any information, and it was being investigated by the military criminal investigations department. So we got an update to that, and apparently this guy, it was like a suicide mission. He took the helicopter out while everyone else was still sleeping, went and flew and crashed the thing himself. So that is the update to that story. Pretty wild story. That just speaks to mental health, and I'll say it like everyone else says it, but if you're struggling with mental health issues, there's resources out there. There's people that you can talk to. And then I don't know how I got down the rabbit hole, but there's been a lot of stories of people jumping out of helicopters like to kill themselves. There's stories about like someone went on a helicopter tour and they were up at an altitude and then they jumped out of the helicopter and the pilot was just shocked. And I could just like imagine myself in that situation, like as the pilot and someone jumps out of my helicopter, they're dead. That's just a super weird situation and something that most people will never experience, hopefully. But yeah, that is the update to that story. But like I said, today we are going to rate helicopter jobs. And as if you guys listened to the last episode, I'm moving and I'm actually taking a vacation. I'm going back home for a couple weeks. I'm still going to have an episode out every Monday, continuing with the guests, hopefully, and some solo episodes. But today we're rating helicopter jobs. And the first one I want to talk about is utility pilots. So utility is a super broad category for helicopter operations. But when I think of utility, I think of mostly like power line stuff. Utility workers. So linemen that go up on the side of typically like an MD-500, and the pilot is hovering right next to the power lines, and then the linemen are actually getting work done. And other type of utility, this is kind of like a long line vertical reference thing, but if you've ever seen a helicopter with a rope tethered to the bottom of it, and then it's got like a bunch of different saws, and they do tree trimming, along power lines, they'll cut the trees. I kind of see those as in the similar category as utility. And for me, utility work is, I think it would be fun, definitely challenging. My experience with utility, and I've never done utility work, but in flight school, we did some long line stuff where, we were looking at the helicopter. You've got your flight controls in your hands, but you're like hanging outside the helicopter, and it's hard and it hurts your neck. It's a weird position to try to control the helicopter from. And, I did it when I was sub 200 hours. I experienced that when I had less than 200 hours. So I don't think it was necessarily the best time to really get a full grasp of what I was doing. Now, with the experience I have, I'd have a much better understanding and ability to control the helicopter. So I may be able to do it better now. But utility work, I could see myself doing, but it's very hazardous. Flying in the wire environment, flying next to power lines, that's dangerous. And wire strikes are, I think, the second biggest killer of helicopter pilots after inadvertent IMC. So just being in that environment is hazardous, but technically fun and good flying, and I'm sure it pays well. So For me, if I had to put utility on an A through D scale, I'd say that's like a C plus job for me. Um, I'd want to do it, but it's not at the top of my list. Like I'd like it, um, but not 100% my style of flying. The next one is flight instructing. Now there flight instruction is weird because in America, pretty much flight instruction is the gateway. It is the gateway drug to the big jobs. You know, it's you have to be a flight instructor to be able to get your 1,000 out, to get your 500 hours, to get your 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000. So most people do get their CFI. It also looks good on a resume, and it's also, I mean, I'm a massive advocate for being a CFI, being a flight instructor, because you get such great experience. Teaching multiple different people how to fly a helicopter. You know, you've got the 70-year-old Vietnam vet who wants to learn how to fly, and then you've got the 17-year-old in high school, and then you've got the stay-at-home mom who wants to learn how to fly, and then you've got the state police or state police trooper who wants to get in the aviation unit. So being able to adapt your teaching styles, it's a great personal skill, but it's also a great piloting skill because you learn how to teach multiple different people. Have to explain the aerodynamics. You have to explain the helicopter. You have to explain how to do maneuvers to all these different people that receive information differently. So I think it makes you I think it just makes you a better person and a smarter person. And it grows your personal development, but it also makes you a much better pilot. And also it's dangerous, which is problematic, but it's also a good thing. Like we all remember, well, if you've been listening to this podcast, Laura Trout, her crash a couple weeks ago, which the helicopter community is still dealing with. It's dangerous. Flight instruction is very dangerous. Things can go wrong very quickly. And when you have someone unexperienced next to you, if they make the wrong control input, your life could be over in a matter of seconds. But on the contrary, when students make mistakes, you as the flight instructor have to fix it. And you get really good at flying the helicopter because you have to understand what the student is doing, and you correct those things, and you can start to anticipate what the helicopter is going to do when a student makes a control input. Like I know every single time instinctively that like when a student is coming on approach, they're going to come down into the hover and then they're going to raise collective. And I know the nose of the helicopter is going to yaw to the right because they're not going to get enough left pedal. And you just start to understand the helicopter and feel it. And there's such a benefit to seeing someone else fly and seeing how the helicopter reacts. You know, like when you're doing it, when you're flying, you're just so into what's happening and you're just very laser focused. When you can kind of step back and just watch someone fly and watch how the helicopter reacts, you get a much better understanding of it. So flight instruction is a double-edged sword. You kind of have to do it, but there's pros and cons to it. If I had to rate flight instruction as a job, I'd say it's like a C, because it's like a 70%, because it's important and it's good, but there's a lot of negatives. It's dangerous. The pay is really trash. There's a lot of actual work involved, logbooks, documents, teaching, personal management, dealing with people's emotions. So it's like a C job. I think it's good and important, but it's like a C. Moving on to ENG, electronic news gathering. This is one that I wanted to do. So like all the traffic reporters, up in the chopper, flying down the highway, or let's say that there's like, I don't know, a big event, like there's a massive police presence at something, or like a car accident, something happened. Electronic news gathering is using the helicopter to circle around an event and get news coverage from the sky. Now, electronic news gathering, I've never done. I'm not an ENG pilot, but that is something that does sound kind of fun. Being a traffic reporter, flying the chopper up and down the highway, relatively easy work, I assume. So, but a little bit boring. But I mean, like police chases, that sounds super fun. Not being a police helicopter, like in the law enforcement side, but just being like one of the news choppers following a police chase. That sounds kind of fun. When big events happen, like I don't know, just whatever big news event. That sounds like a fun job. So, um, and that's I kind of see electronic news gathering as something that you do in the start of your career. So like your 500 ish to like 2000 hour mark. That's kind of where I see ENG fitting in. And for me, ENG is like a B. That sounds like a fun job. You know, pay is pretty decent. It's not great. It's not the top of the scale, but pretty decent, pretty good flying. You're no longer instructing. You're not flying tours, which is in the same route, so it's new and different every day. So ENG is like a solid B. Like I'd be happy to be an ENG pilot. The next one is offshore oil rigs, and flying in the gas oil rig market. The oil rigs are once again a double-edged sword. I think it's better than flight instruction. Just going back to that, but the oil rigs, I think it's fun. It looks fun, you know, just flying from land out to an oil rig in the middle of the ocean, and then bouncing around from oil rig to oil rig, and then back, transferring people, supplies, things, and just going in between oil rigs. That sounds fun, and um, the problem with it is it seems quite dangerous. Flying in, and so especially like the single pilot stuff in the VFR operations, um, just sounds hazardous. You know, you're over open water, weather can deteriorate, and then you've got nowhere to go. You know, you gotta if let's say like you do take off and the weather seems okay, and then the weather drops, you're gonna have to figure your stuff out while you're doing it. You know, either turn around, land if you can, if there's somewhere to land. But then when you get into like the bigger operations, like the dual pilot stuff and some of the bigger helicopters like the S-92, the S-76, um, that kind of stuff's much more safe, you know, because you're really IFR capable. You've got a lot more options. Um, but the biggest problem with oil rigs is you're just far from home. You know, most people don't live in the South, live in Louisiana. Um, so like the Panhandle of Florida, you got to travel there every 2 weeks. So most of the schedules are 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So like if you live in like California or something, you got to travel out to Louisiana every 2 weeks, and then fly, be away from your family. So it's just kind of a demanding schedule. But I know that those jobs can pay well. I know like starting maybe 70,000 ish, but then you can bump up into the low to mid 100s pretty quickly. So offshore oil rigs, I would give like a B. Yeah, like a B, a solid B, like just like an 85%. I think it'd be a good job, but I think it's something I want to do. And, you know, you get a really good experience, all turbine stuff, really fun flying. You really get to use your GPS. You get to use your instruments if you're in like an instrument rated thing. I think it's a great experience, really crazy weather. So yeah, I think in terms of like on your resume and um, just piloting experience, I think it's something that I would want to do. So I'd give it a B. All right, then we have construction jobs. Construction is not something that I really want to do, you know. And when I say construction, I mean like assembling things together. So like, you know, you've got the Sikorsky Sky Crane or stuff, or like lifting things onto buildings, or assembling windmills, constructing things, or like putting up I don't know. I think mostly just windmills. I've just seen videos of helicopters lifting windmills onto studs. Very precise flying. Very, yeah, it's super precision based. Long line style. You know, your head's out the window, looking down. Very hazardous. You know, you're operating constantly in the height velocity diagram. If your engine fails, it's just a tough position to be in. But I mean, that's less likely. But you know, you've got this big thing underneath the helicopter. It's just very hazardous. and very challenging. You know, the pilots that do that, I give them massive credit. It's just not there for me. I don't think it seems that fun. And I don't honestly know too much about the ins and outs of helicopter construction, but for me, that's like that's like a C minus. Um, you know, just because I don't know enough about it, I can't give it a D. But it's just like a C minus. It's just I even if I had the hours, I'm not sure I would apply for a job there. But I'm open to learning more about it. Moving on to tours. Tours and the tour helicopter pilot job, that is something there's a lot going on there. So there's multiple different categories of it. So you could have like low time tour stuff, which is like Robinson R44 time, probably anywhere from 300 to 500 hours of experience you can get in there. But um, Florida, South Carolina, the Smoky Mountains, California, all of those jobs, like all those locations, you're probably flying the Robinson R44 and relatively quick tours. Which I personally like tours because I like talking to people. I like showing people what the helicopter feels like and telling them my experience and what the helicopter can do, and just because people want to go up and be in the sky. So I like it for that, but relatively boring because you're flying the same route. Typically, I mean, maybe there's a couple different routes, but pretty much the same route. Um, but the nice thing about it is you're flying by yourself, you know. Flight instruction is kind of irritating because you have to fly with someone else and there's someone else on the controls and you don't really get to fly that much. Once you get into tours, you're the only person flying. And then once you get back into like oil rigs and maybe like a dual pilot situation, you may not be flying. But tours are fun because you get to actually do the flying. And I've done some New York City tours, been down in the city, and it is fun. A little bit boring, but relatively fun and unproblematic and better than instruction. And then, so that's the low level tour side. And then you've got like some of the higher level tour stuff. So now you're talking about New York again, but in the 407. And then you've got like Hawaii out in the EC 130, Blue Hawaiian. You've got Hawaii in the 407 Paradise helicopters. There's a bunch of helicopter operators out in Hawaii in the AS 350. Then you've got Nevada, Papillon, up and down the strip, and then you've got like the Grand Canyon, and then you've got Alaska tours as well. Now all of those places do have like Robinson R44 stuff, but they also do have like a pretty big turbine market, and those jobs are like 1,000 hours PIC time. So like Alaska, up at Temsco, I'm pretty sure it's like 1,000, maybe 11 or 1,200 PIC time, but those like flying turbine, but you're in a really intense environment like Alaska, the Grand Canyon, New York City. That stuff sounds fun. You know, I'm not sure if it's really like a lifetime job, something that you would do for the rest of your career, but you could be comfortable doing tours in New York City for a decade. You could be comfortable doing tours in Alaska for 10 seasons. Same thing out in Nevada. So I think tours on that 1,000 hour mark, that sounds fun. That sounds like a good time. That sounds like something I'd want to do. So I'd give that like a B plus. I'd give that like an A category. You know, the pay is not great, but you're flying good, cool machines, turbine hours, big helicopters in cool areas like New York City and Alaska. That would be super cool. So I'd give that like an A minus. Like that's for a couple seasons. Like that is peak helicopter stuff. Even though you're flying the same route, I think it's fun just for a couple years. All right, next we've got charter. Charter operations is like what I want to do. This is like flying someone out from somewhere to somewhere else, you know, from New York City out to, I don't know, Westchester County, or flying people from Miami to Tampa, or flying someone from LA to San Francisco. You know, they are paying you for your operations. Now, charter is how Kobe Bryant died. He was being chartered. He had a personal helicopter. But that really doesn't speak much at all about the actual job type. That one incident, well, it kind of does because if you're chartering, you're probably dealing with people that have money. You are dealing with people that have a high amounts of money and they need to get to where they're going. So there is going to be that inherent pressure to get them to where they're going, that operational pressure, especially if you're dealing with like these high A-list celebrities or business people that have so much money, they're counting on you to get it done and they think you're the right guy, you've got your IFR, you've got your commercial, you're flying this big helicopter, you should be able to do it. And then things can go wrong. But I think charter work is incredibly fun because it's pretty basic flying, straight and level stuff. You're probably on At this point, you're probably on an IFR flight plan, unless you're in like a 407 or something. But like the Sikorsky stuff, like the S-76, you're probably on an IFR flight plan, pretty safe flying, pretty stable stuff, not really doing maneuvers, not really landing anywhere crazy. You're probably going airport to airport. So good, safe flying typically. Um, and the pay is pretty good. The pay is probably pretty close to the highest end of the spectrum for helicopter pilots, which, it's something that it matters to all of us at different levels, but that's something that I want to do. But I think it would also just be fun to interact with high profile people. I think that is, I think that's fun. Just working at the airport where I work at, I've met some celebrities, and it's cool. I don't know. I guess I can't really put into words. It just sounds like something that's fun to me. And there's different types of charter work. So there's like on demand stuff where there's like scheduled charter stuff. So you're like constantly flying these routes, but then there's like on demand, like personal charter stuff. And that's what really, just being someone's pilot, like really being a private pilot for someone. That sounds like fun. That sounds like an A-list job to me. That's what I want to do. So charter stuff. Next we've got police/law enforcement, border patrol, DEA stuff, all of the law enforcement stuff. That sounds good. Fun stuff. You're doing surveillance, you're doing tracking, you're getting up, you're doing the cool stuff. You get to catch bad guys, you get to see things from a perspective that other people don't get to see. So I think law enforcement would be fun. There's a couple operations where you could be just like a civilian pilot working for a police department or for a law enforcement agency, as well as you could be like a sworn officer for that law enforcement agency. If I was going to do it, I think I'd want to do it like on the law enforcement side and be a sworn officer, just because I'm a pilot and a law enforcement officer. I think that's just something that I could do. And I think that'd be fun. But, tracking bad guys and doing the police chases and making call outs and flying along the border, looking for people, that just sounds fun, and making the community a better place. So that is like a B job to me. Yeah, like a solid B. That sounds fun. Moving on to corporate. Corporate flying is, as the name implies, you're just flying for a big company, a corporation, and being the pilot for them. No, there's not. I honestly don't know. I don't think there's too many corporate helicopter operations. Of course, there's massive corporate jet operations, where corporations own these jets and you just got to fly them to all their business meetings. There's less of that on the helicopter side, but I could see myself doing that. Pay is probably good. Flying is there's probably some pressure there to get the job done. But I think corporate flying would be pretty fun, just working for a corporation, but not, maybe that's like a long-term thing. You could sit there for, if you're like stabilized with your family and you like the location and the benefits and the pay are good, and then you could be there for a while, I think. Moving on, search and rescue. Search and rescue is like why a lot of people want to get into helicopters. This is like why helicopters are so special because they can do things that other aircraft can't. They can land in places, they can hover, they can drop someone out and pick them up, off of the boat, off of the cruise ship, um, in the middle of the mountains. And with search and rescue, sometimes the there's kind of like a line between like the private stuff versus like the military government stuff, like Coast Guard search and rescue versus like private search and rescue. There's less of the private side, so it's kind of more of a military thing. But there are definitely some private search and rescue companies, and that flying is cool. You're saving someone's life. It's probably really bad weather conditions, because, or it's in a really technically challenging environment. Um, I think search and rescue is like the epitome of why helicopters are so important and so cool and why people look up to them. And I think search and rescue is like an A class job. That is the peak of helicopter flying, peak of helicopter performance. That's why a lot of people do it. And I think search and rescue is so rewarding. So, yeah, I give that an A class job. Firefighting. Firefighting is badass, dangerous, definitely dangerous because you're in an environment with obviously fire. You're in an environment with other aircraft. You're in an environment with rapidly changing conditions, wild weather. The fire creates its own weather. So firefighting seems fun, but really good flying, low level stuff, water buckets, landing and picking up water from a backyard pool or a lake. Really fun, challenging, good stick skills. Unlike charter, which is like probably on an IFR flight plan, straight and level, easy flying, firefighting is like that backwoods, young kid style type flying. That's really fun. Definitely dangerous, but really rewarding, getting to save properties, challenging. I think firefighting is like an A class job as well. That's cool stuff. Then you've got helicopter skiing. Helicopter skiing is badass, taking a bunch of skiers or snowboarders up to the top of a mountain that has never been skied or snowboard before, letting them out and letting them go ski, and then watching them as they go down, taking their gear up. Heli skiing is super cool. Not for me, I don't think. Maybe at some point, but for me, that doesn't seem like, it's just not something I want to do. But helicopter skiing is like super cool, super fun, easy, relatively easy flying. You're probably not talking to air traffic control. You're kind of just out there having fun. Sounds like in the back country. That sounds like a good time. That's like a B minus type thing. I really enjoy that. The thought of that. Helicopter logging. Now, helicopter logging is, I don't have that much information about it, but from the knowledge that I do have about it, you've got like Christmas trees. There was that, I don't know if you guys follow Vertical Magazine on their Instagram page, but they posted this really cool video of these Bell 206s moving Christmas trees from where the Christmas tree farm over into a pile, or onto a truck. And that sounds really fun. They do the same thing with just trees that have been logged, chopped down and you got to move them. Helicopters they're an expensive way to do it, but very efficient way to do it. They can pick up vertically, pick the tree up and move it to where it needs to be done. That's kind of like a utility thing. Like maybe could go to the utility category. Not for me, not my style, but I definitely see some benefit to it. And now if I had to rate it, I'd give it like a C. That's just like a cool job, but not for me. Moving on, frost protection. For anyone that doesn't know, frost protection is when there are, usually in the fall or in the spring, I think mostly in the spring, when crops are starting to bloom, they're coming into their prime, and then maybe you get like a really cold night or something, and the crops freeze. And what you have to do as the helicopter pilot is fly over them and find where the warm air is, and then use your downwash to push warm air on top of the crops and prevent them from freezing and save the crop. Usually happens at night, in the early morning hours, like 2 a.m. to like 5 a.m. before the sun comes up, when it's the coldest part of the night. Uh, very dangerous. You know, you're flying in these fields with wires and trees and crops, and you have to get real down low, so your downwash gets on top of them. Um, it just sounds hazardous, and that's more of like a kind of a low hour type job. You know, that's like I see that as like a sub 1,000 hour job. You know, probably in a Robinson helicopter. Um, hazardous, back and forth flying over the fields. Pay is probably not great. That's like a C minus. Like that job is just something. I mean, maybe I would do it just for the experience, but I wouldn't really. Not for me. Moving on to cattle herding, or maybe that's what it's called. I don't know. That's just what I read down. Cattle herding, but this is really big in uh, Australia, and there's I don't know what company it is, but they've got like 20 Robinson helicopters, 20 Robinson R-22s, and what they'll do is they'll fly around and move move these cows around by scaring them with the helicopter, really down low, really insane flying, putting the helicopter in really weird positions. Um, it's like cowboying, you know, it's like being on a horse moving cattle, but in a helicopter. Cool flying, really fun, dangerous as crap, you know, really down low. You're like probably less than 50 feet, moving the helicopter in weird positions. And some of these videos, there was this video maybe a couple months ago of this guy in a Robinson R-22 herding a cow, and he is just yanking and baking this helicopter. And I was reading through some of the comments. I won't share my thoughts, but I was reading through some of the comments, and some of them were like, wow, he's a really good pilot. Like, look at how he can move that helicopter. And then also some of the comments were like, that guy's an absolute moron. Like, there's no need to fly like that. Even in, I don't know if it's called mustering, something like that, but like just cow herding, that they were saying that it was unnecessary for him to fly like that. So I don't know. For me, and I also don't think it's that big of a thing in America, but for me, that's like a C class job. You know, fun but very dangerous. Moving on to no, I didn't put this one on the list, but the last one made me think of it. But then you've got like helicopter hog hunting, which is like usually in like a Robinson R-44. That's what I've seen. Maybe some turbine helicopters, but you know, you go out in like Texas or the deep South, and hogs are a very invasive species, very problematic. They destroy crops. They really are a problem. And, you know, an effective way to deal with them and a fun way to deal with them is go shooting. You know, it's a very American thing. It's like probably the most American thing I've ever heard of. But, you know, you just go up and shoot these hogs as they're flying around, or shoot these hogs as you're flying around. Once again, relatively low level flying. We all know that video about the guy having an engine failure on takeoff for a hog hunt. He handled it well, but I mean, there's some speculation on what happened with that accident. But low level flying, kind of hazardous, but you know, you've got people in the back now instead of just being in a Robinson R-22 moving cows around. You've got people with guns in the back. So your flying style is a little bit more safe. You know, I've also seen this be done in a Robinson R-22 where you're just the pilot and then the shooter and they go up and do it. Sounds like a fun time. I think I'd want to do that. Maybe for a season. That's like a B level job to me. That just sounds fun and American and kind of cool. Moving on to ferry flights, being a ferry pilot. A ferry pilot is literally just ferrying helicopters to and from locations. So if a helicopter needs to get somewhere, you just fly it there. I don't know if it's a super consistent job. I don't have that much experience, but it seems like fun, easy flying, good time building. That's about it. I don't know. That's like a C level job. I don't know that much about it, but it seems like fine. Next, you've got photo flights. This is where you go up and you take photographers up. You know, photo flights are no different to me than tour flights because people are taking pictures on tours anyway. So you're pretty much just giving a tour just so the photographer can see what he wants to see and get pictures of. So fun, easy flying. You're only really going to do it when the weather's good, so relatively safe. You've got no one messing with your controls. I don't know. Photo flights seem fun. That's definitely a sub 1,000 hour type job. I don't think too many people are doing that when they have thousands of hours. But photo flights, like a C level job, just like basic entry level job, pretty fine job. All right, then you've got the probably the biggest one, the EMS pilot and medevac pilot. This is like the big Kahuna job. You're flying really cool helicopters, flying really cool missions. You are saving lives. You're landing on highways. You're landing on top of hospitals. You're fighting to get someone. You're fighting with someone's life in the back. This is like the peak of what I think helicopters are capable of, and why they are so great. EMS pilots and medevac pilots, that's something I want to do. Kind of dangerous, and they're flying in sometimes dangerous weather conditions. But they have the option to say no. And because I'm not in the industry, I don't know this for sure, but from what I've heard, and anyone can correct me, that if there is a flight where I don't think the pilot knows about the patient before they make the decision. So let's say that a call comes in and this patient needs to go from this location to another location. The pilot does not know about the age, gender, or what happened to the person or why they need to be moved. And I think that's really important, because if there's like a 5-year-old that is dying or something, like a 5-year-old boy got hit a tree while he was on a motorcycle or something, that may affect the pilot more, because maybe the pilot has like a 5-year-old son and he just feels the emotions and he forces that flight to happen. So I think the pilot doesn't know about it before he makes the weather decision, and then maybe he finds out at that point. But I think sometimes EMS pilots fly in bad weather conditions and fly at night, and especially like single pilot at night over really dark areas, like over forests and over water. It just can be hazardous, but I think it's worth it, and there's ways to make it safer, especially with NVG and all the automation with inside the helicopters. So I think it can be done safely. EMS is like the A+ job. It's something, I think it's what a lot of people see as the peak of their career, and it's something that I want to do. So I think that is like the best of the best. And then you've got we've only got 3 more. Then you've got game capture. Game capture is pretty cool. So this is when you are up in the helicopter and you're taking like scientists or biologists or whatever in the back, and you're going out and finding animals. Because helicopters are a great resource to be able to see things from the sky. You can go out and maybe there's like a tranquilizer and you get down low by the animal. You shoot the animal with the tranquilizer, and then the biologist can get out of the helicopter, and then you can go, they can go survey the animal, do whatever work they need to do. I think that's cool. I've seen a lot of this stuff in like Africa with like the elephants and stuff. That sounds really fun, saving animals or protecting animals or just helping them out, and using the helicopter as a resource to help things that can't help themselves. So I think game capture or working with animals and using helicopters to do that. Or even, I've even seen them like throw a deer in the back of a helicopter, or throw an animal in the back of the helicopter and take it to a medical center to be treated, and then put it back on to back into the land. So I think that sounds great. That is like a B-level job. That's pretty cool. I'm not sure if I would want to do that forever, but that's like a B-level job. Okay. Then you've got a survey pilot. A survey pilot is where they go up and take pictures of the land. They map the land. Boring flying. You're only going to be flying in pretty decent weather conditions. Boring. This is like a sub 1,500 probably. Doesn't easy flying. It's good hour building, maybe the pay is decent, but it just doesn't do anything for me. So that's like a C-level job. The last one is crop dusting. Crop dusting is, some people love it. Some people that do crop dusting absolutely love it. You're in the fields, just you by yourself, probably listening to music, spraying whatever you're spraying, like pesticides on these crops, and just flying around low level, doing those crop dusting turns, flying low over the field, pulling back, climbing, kicking the pedal, turning the helicopter, coming back down and getting another one. Dangerous flying, your low level power lines, you're yanking and banking the helicopter, but fun stuff. Those are, I think that's about 1,000 hour plus mark. But that sounds fun, but dangerous. I'm not that cowboy pilot. It's just not for me, but I've got some friends, that's right up their alley. But for me, it's like a C plus, B minus type job. I think that'd be fun. But ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the list. The reason I did that, like I said at the start of this episode, was just because I kind of wanted to have fun today. I just wanted to go through and rank all the helicopter jobs that I know exist. If I missed some, let me know. You can shoot me a message and we'll chat about those. But that's like a pretty good list of the things that helicopters can do. And I kind of just gave you my perspective on them. I'd be really interested to know what you guys think about what I said about those jobs and what your thoughts are on those jobs. And I'm sure we would have different rankings on this list. But I am on vacation. I am enjoying it to the max. But still got YouTube videos out. This podcast is going to keep coming out every Monday. But we'll wrap it up there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Chopper Talk, and I will see you next Monday. Take care.